If you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have two members, Charlene and Wendy, who are remoting into us because they couldn't make it tonight. So they're on the computer in front here. Agenda review, anything to add, Kathy? Okay, snow removal and food distribution to be added to the superintendent's report. Okay, next item on the agenda is the approval of the school board minutes from the December 7th meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Dr. Jim. Second by Tim. Okay, all in favor, roll call vote. Krista? Julianne? Jane? Tim? Wendy? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Yes. Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes aye as well. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the manifest tonight, and the manifest's total accounts payable is $1,914,086.65, and the payroll manifests are $2,284,854.25, for a total of $4,198,940.90. Motion to approve? Anyone?
Second.
Moved by Tim, seconded by Dr. Jim. Okay, all those in favor, Krista? Julianne? Tim? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Yes. Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes aye as well. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public input. And we're here tonight to listen to you, your concerns. I want to remind you that there are a lot of differences of opinions out there. Please be respectful of not only the people in the audience, but the people up here on the stage. These are very difficult times. We want to hear you, but please be respectful. If there are any personal attacks to anybody in the audience or on the board here, or anybody else in the administration, I'll ask for a motion to go into non-public, and we'll clear the hall, and we'll do our non-public business. So anybody that would like to speak, please come up to the microphone, state your name and the town that you're from. Yeah, is that, just make sure that speaker is on, please. Yeah. And when you get finished, please, I think there's a wipes there. I think you just wipe the microphone when you get finished.
Can you hear it? Is this
Yes.
good? My name is Mark Donito. I'm from Wolfeboro. I have two children in the high school who are among the top students and athletes in the athletic program. The reason I'm here tonight is mostly to really listen and learn, see you guys in action, and to see what I can find out about how you come to a decision where you decide to cancel winter sports. I just need to know, I need to know how you get that when so many people who are educated on the topic oppose it. I've heard lots of different things. I want to hear it straight from you. I think most people understand the value of athletics for teenagers, for anybody, to be able to be emotionally and intellectually healthy as well as physically. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me if there's, I mean, obviously the pandemic is a big deal. We're all dealing with it, some more personally than others, including myself. So don't think for a minute I don't appreciate the seriousness of it, but I'm also aware that high school sports programs are not super spreader events. And that's my main message. And when you make a decision, because there's a chance of some people getting sick, even though there are protocols in place, as there are in the academic setting, it doesn't make sense when you make a decision that has a 100% chance of negatively impacting our kids by taking them out of the sports that they love. And it's not just sports. I think you know that. There's a lot of value to it. I mean, not to mention their careers going forward into college. Some of these kids are looking in that direction, and that has a huge impact. I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but we're the only school in New Hampshire that has canceled winter sports. A lot of us have had to scramble and find quality clubs to enroll our kids in. That costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars, worth every penny. But we shouldn't have to take that step. So I just need to know more. I don't want to know that anybody made a decision because they're personally panicked or afraid, or they feel that they're in a position to make the decision on our behalf because we voted you there. We didn't vote you there because we think you're smarter than us or more capable. That's not the reason. We trust your judgment, and we need to be able to keep trusting it. There's a lot at stake here. So before I get too frustrated with it, I'm just going to pass it off to somebody else.
Thank you, yes. And there will be, there's a discussion later on in the agenda on the sports programs.
Good evening, board members and parents. My name is Paul DeRocher, and I have 4 children that attend the schools here in Wolfeboro. Unfortunately, I just found out about this meeting yesterday, and I haven't had too much time to prepare. Tonight, I want to be a voice for the many children that are struggling with this new way of learning and the lack of athletics in our district. Over the Christmas break, I had an opportunity to take my son and a friend out to do some back roads, kind of like what I used to do when I was a kid, when we were teenagers. Part of the agreement is we were going to talk about some issues. We talked about many things, what it's like to be a teenager and the many distractions we can get caught up in. We eventually got on the topic of school. I started asking them both many questions, and it was amazing what they expressed, not only to me, but themselves. Both expressed the anxiety and the depression they were feeling. The lack of connection was the big one for them. They were expressing the upcoming online learning and how much of a stress it was going to be. I could feel and see the anxiety in their eyes. My daughters seem to do okay with the online learning, but I see them struggling a bit too. My son is struggling the most. He's having a hard time keeping up with grades and always under the stress of staying ahead. Many of the parents that are here tonight want their kids back in school and doing the things they enjoy the most, sports. They also see the effects of it. My son went from an outgoing person, always willing to help others, to a person that has a hard time engaging with his core friends and attending outside of the school activities. As a father, this is the hardest thing to hear and watch. My son and many other children are struggling with the same. It's time to put our kids back into the schools and get them back and doing the things they enjoy most, sports and academics. I could go on about statistics and the crazy curriculums that our kids are learning all night, but I'll leave that for another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Corey Hunter. I live in Wolfeboro, and my daughter is a fourth grader attending the Crescent Lake School. First of all, I would like to thank the board and the superintendent, all the teachers, staff, administration at all the schools for everything you've done to this point in the year. I am here tonight to speak to both a full return to in-person learning as well as a return to winter athletics. I would like to draw your attention to two other school districts in our area which I believe are most similar to ours in many ways, yet have chosen to take a much different approach during this pandemic. We have all heard the phrase, "We are the biggest geographical district in the state." That may well be the case, but the districts of Pemmy-Baker, which covers the Plymouth area, and Kennett, the Conway area, have distinct similarities to our district. Our district serves 7 towns, while Pemmy-Baker serves 10 towns, and Kennett serves 9 towns. All 3 districts have similar total enrollment populations. Both of those districts have been in full in-person learning environments since September and opened back immediately after the holiday break to full in-person learning. The option for full remote has been available to families throughout the entire year in those districts. Both of those districts are offering winter sports for high school, middle school, as well as facility use for youth sports. When you look at the number of COVID-19 active cases, our district sits in a much better place than both of those. We currently have 46 active cases in our towns, while Pemmy-Baker has 80 and Kennett 57. We have consistently been in a more benign COVID environment than those schools. In fact, back in the fall, we had a long period where the only cases in all of our towns were at the Ossipee Nursing Home. Even then, our kids weren't allowed to be in school full time. The question for me continues to be, why are we choosing to be different in every way than other schools in towns in similar COVID-19 environments? We continue to be in one of the relatively most benign COVID environments in the state, yet we are one of the most restrictive with our choices. High schools in cities and towns much more rampant with COVID-19 are offering fully in-person learning and are playing winter sports. Even schools that are in full remote learning are playing winter sports. Laconia has 89 active cases crammed into a much tighter geographical area than us, yet they are providing sports for kids in elementary, middle, and high school. It has been stated by Principal Donnelly and acknowledged by this board that if sports are not permitted by our board, people will still be playing. They will be taking their kids all around the state to play. That is indeed the case. Besides many others I know of who are doing this, I am personally coaching a 7th and 8th grade boys basketball team playing in a league out of Manchester. I am also coaching a 3rd and 4th grade co-ed basketball team playing in Guilford. All necessary protocols are being instituted and followed. All of the parents involved have deemed these activities to be safe for their children, and they are willing to spend quite a bit of money to do this for their kids. Well, for me, I ask the question, how about the families who can't afford or don't have the time to do that for their children? How about the families who can't afford to hire a retired teacher or a tutor or proper daycare for the 3 days a week they are not in school? How about the students who are interested in theater, art, music, or technical activities? For the majority of students, schools are the only places where they have the opportunity to be a part of these activities. We are furthering a disproportionate environment within our own district by holding the majority of students and athletes back. In fact, we are making that disparity exponentially worse. I have spoken before to the subpar state testing results as well as other statistics concerning our district at prior meetings. Our children are generally being undereducated, and now this board continues to be determined to set them back even further. While their lack of educational progress continues, a lot of other things in their lives get worse. What do you say to those children who are getting abused? Watching one parent abuse another parent? Or how about watching their parents' drug or alcohol abuse play out in front of them daily? How about not being properly fed or getting exercise? How about depression, anxiety, and suicide? How about developmental issues and needs? How about the added expenses involved with being at home more often? Schools are where these issues get noticed and where the help is most available. With the votes you cast, you are all complicit in putting those lifelong traumas on our children. In your minds, what type of legacy are you leaving to these kids? I am asking this board to please consider why you continue voting differently than other districts in similar settings. Our children need to be back in the classroom and back on the playing fields. There are many things and times in life where being different is perfectly okay, but not with this stuff. By choosing to be different, this board continues to punish our students, our athletes, and others, and continues to hold them back from necessary development. While all the other students and athletes elsewhere continue to get more fulfilling opportunities, ours continue to be stopped in their tracks. The playing field is not going to be level for our children moving forward, and they will forever be trying to catch up. Our children shouldn't be punished because of where we live, especially when the COVID case rate dictates the opposite. Please recognize the negative impacts that this is having on our children. Please get our students back in school starting in early February, and get our winter athletes back on the ice, the courts, and the slopes immediately so they can continue their development towards fulfilling their hopes and dreams. After all, isn't the district motto, helping each child create the future? I ask every member of this board, what type of future do you envision they are currently being allowed to create? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a little hard to follow that eloquent speech. My name is Rob Arston. We live in Tuftonboro, and we have a fourth grader in the Crescent Lake School. And I'd also like to start out by thanking the board for all the work they do. These are difficult times. But I feel during these difficult times, the most important thing is to be absolutely, number one, transparent, and number two, use analytics and data in making decisions. And when I looked and I hear what Corey just said, the gentleman just said before me, those other school districts are incredibly transparent in how they're making their decisions as to whether these kids go back to school remote, hybrid, or full-time. Yet here in our school district, we don't have that. We don't have a schedule that says this is what the case rate is. We don't have that. We listen to anecdotal information that comes from somebody saying, well, you see how bad it is over by Manchester or down by Boston? It doesn't apply here. So I would like to hear the school board lay out, every time they make a decision as to what they're going to do with our kids' futures, exactly what the data is that they're using and the reasoning behind it in great detail. We deserve that. So as a start on that, I would like to figure out, what did the last survey come back with? Right before the last meeting, around the last meeting, there was a parent survey. What are those results? Are we going to hear them tonight? I hope we do. I would like to understand what the analytics is behind whatever decision we're making. So is it based on what the COVID is in the community right now? Have we taken that into account in what the spread is? Have we looked at any of the studies that actually take a very detailed look in the impact and the spread of COVID in actual school buildings? The evidence to date is that it's almost none. It's non-existent. The spread is happening outside of school districts, outside of schoolrooms, outside of classrooms. The other piece I'd like to understand, I know we hired a consultant. Are we using that consultant? Where's the consultant's report? Do we have his feedback or her feedback or that firm's feedback? How are they evaluating the situation? And I think the one thing that is sort of, I haven't heard mentioned really in any of these Board of Education meetings, is weighing the deep negative impact this is having, especially on those of lower socioeconomic means, and their children, by having kids not be going back to school full time. You can look at tons of reports out there, including the Pediatric Association, and what's happening and the damage that's being done to kids. And I'm not hearing that and that analytics being done as we make this decision to not open schools up fully. I'd appreciate it if we could get that information provided to us. Thank you.
Roger Decato. I have a first grader at Carpenter and a third grader at Carpenter. I've been coming to these meetings since the beginning, and time after time, parents come up here and plead with you to send the kids back to school, to put them in sports, and it just falls on deaf ears. No matter what the parents say, no matter how much they plead, nothing happens. All we see is just a bunch of fear-mongering, and something needs to change. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Jessica Williams, and I have one homeschooled child at this time and one in 11th grade. My questions tonight are regarding the state's definition in the statutes as to what adequate education means in the state of New Hampshire. And I guess I would just like to know from maybe Kathy, what does that mean? Because I said the students have to meet certain criteria. I would like to know how you're measuring that right now.
Okay, well, we'll answer that after public input. We'll get back into some of those questions.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I showed up a little bit
That's
behind. I
okay.
had to drop a child off at hockey practice. I'll get back up and ask it again later.
Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, if not, we're going to move on with the agenda at this point. We do have some of these issues on the agenda later on this evening. We're going to start right now with the budget adoption hearing. This is required. We had an initial budget presentation in December, and this is the required second budget hearing where the board gets a chance to actually approve the budget before it goes to the deliberative session, which will be held on the 30th in this room at 10 o'clock in the morning. Ready? Okay, thank you for being here tonight and tuning into the budget adoption hearing. If you are watching the meeting tonight from home, our goal is to provide the community with several opportunities to learn about the budget. In November, we held 3 Finance Committee meetings, which were open to the public. December board meeting, we had a preliminary review of the budget. After tonight's hearing, the next formal opportunity to learn about the budget is at the deliberative session on January 30th. However, you are also welcome to reach out to the SAU office or the Finance Committee members with any questions. We hope that you will become familiar with the budget and have all of your questions answered before voting in March. There are many steps in the budget development process before the budget proposal comes before the full board. The budget presentation begins in October. Principals meet with the faculty and staff and provide them with requests and recommendations regarding what is needed for each school. Each administrator submits a budget to the SAU office. The business administrator and superintendent of schools meets with each school leader to discuss their requests. If there is a large increase in an individual school budget, unless there is a special circumstance or very well justified rationale, the administrator is asked to review the budget and reduce it, while keeping priorities intact. If any significant increase remains that doesn't have strong justification, a second cut may occur. Personnel requests are made at the same time. Requests for positions may or may not proceed to the Finance Committee, depending on the strength of the rationale outlining the There are occasions when requested promotions are well justified and very much needed, yet nevertheless, due to financial circumstances, the Finance Committee is unable to recommend that. Here we go. This is the position we are in this year. The business administrator reviews district line items and determines amounts requested based on past history, current expenditures, and projected pricing. After cuts, adjustments, and reallocation have been made, the Finance Committee meets with the principals, the special education director, the business administrator, and the superintendent to review the budget requests. At this time, the Finance Committee recommends changes they feel are necessary to bring a budget to voters that supplies what our schools need and what the voters will support. These are the public meetings that I referred to earlier that occur in November. Again this year, the administrators did an excellent job bringing forward a reasonable budget. This budget is not a pandemic budget and is based on the assumption we will be back to school full-time. However, due to the pandemic, lowered revenue projections, and concerns about the tax rate, we have looked at every possible place to reduce the budget and still provide what is needed for our children. The enrollment figure. Oh, there we go. Back. Yeah, I got the handheld. That's working? Okay. The enrollment figures you see here illustrate the decrease we have seen in the majority of our schools. Only Crescent Lake School has increased enrollment. Last year, we saw a slight upward trend. However, our enrollment has most definitely been hurt by the pandemic. The lower student numbers include our students who are in the entirely remote program. However, the numbers do not include the students who are being homeschooled. It is difficult to know how many of the students who are currently not in school will return when the pandemic is over. This is important for many reasons, including the fact that our enrollment figures have an impact on our revenue. When we have fewer students, we receive less adequacy money, also known as grant money, from the state of New Hampshire. The decrease in the grant is always greater than the amount we are able to decrease in our budget due to expenses. The vast majority of school districts are experiencing lower enrollments due to the pandemic and anticipate that the revenue will be negatively impacted next year when adequacy money dollars are based on these enrollment numbers. There is some attempt to appeal to the legislature to pass legislation that would hold the districts harmless and allow the use of the last year's numbers or an average of the last 3 years. Here you see a quick summary of the broadest budget categories. The employee expenses have increased 5.37%. This is the largest increase in the budget. The other expense categories have increased 1.24%. The general fund budget total increase is 4.46%. The substantial increases in this budget are the ones over which we have little or no control. The general fund budget does not include the decrease in the building and maintenance warrant article, which is 19.23%. This brings the total budget increase to 4.16%. In the employee section of the general fund budget, the area that has shown the most significant increase is the New Hampshire retirement system. The increase in this area is $938,403, representing an increase of 25.54%. This increase is not due to any circumstances locally, but is related to the management of the retirement funds and investments affecting the plan's unfunded actuarial liability or the amount of promised benefits that are greater than assets of the pension plan. The employee expenses portion of the general fund contains the second largest increase in the larger percentage of the cost of health insurance in this area. This area has a larger increase. The health insurance increase is $758,479, an increase percentage of 9.14%. The rate is largely driven by claims. Wages for our staff increased 1.64%, or $416,169. The support staff will be in the final year of a 3-year contract, and the teachers are in the 3rd year of a 4-year collective bargaining agreement. The wages are fixed and driven by collective bargaining agreements that were previously approved. We do not have control over the rise in the health insurance rates or the increase in the New Hampshire retirement system. These increases were so significant, we had to make some difficult decisions regarding the remaining areas of the budget. For example, we were not able to fund personnel requests for 2 additional positions. We would have liked to have been able to support these requests, but felt we could not, given the areas that increased that were obligated to the funds. The total increase in the remaining portion of the general fund budget is only 1.24%, or a total of $97,526. Professional services has an increase due to our contract with Huggins Hospital for our nursing services. We looked at all areas of this portion of the budget. We lowered repair and maintenance and made small changes where we felt we could without impacting programs too severely. These include athletics, rubbish disposal, printing, replacement of furniture, and general supplies. The IT department upgraded the phone system in some of the schools as planned, and this is a savings to the district, 19% on the cost of our phone services. Our contracted transportation was lowered. We have a grant that will pay for a portion of a van, allowing the district to transport more of our special education students to outside placements rather than contracting with a company which is more expensive. The only notable increases are in the computer area. The district needs to continue to fund software licenses in order to use the programs we have found beneficial to students and staff. Computer equipment is needed to replace the equipment that is no longer functional due to age or use. And the cost of vehicle replacement is down with the help of the special education grant. In the past several years, we retired our debts for the Ossipee, Effingham, and New Durham bonds, leaving only the bond for the Kingswood Complex renovation. As our principal on the bond for the complex decreases, the building aid, which helps to defray our costs, also decreases. This year, the decrease adds 1.31% to our debt service, or $47,283. There are no collective bargaining agreements on the warrant this year. The two articles that we propose each year, building and maintenance and the turf field capital reserve, are once again being recommended. The proposed building maintenance warrant article is for $150,000 rather than $200,000. The Finance Committee is recommending the $50,000 reduction in spite of a very long list of projects that need to be completed. We'll definitely need to return to our usual recommendation in order to keep our schools in good repair for the long term. I've gotten a list of the projects that would be covered by the $150,000, and the fact that we're reducing the budget by $50,000 or the request by $50,000 could be covered with a capital reserve fund that has been held for maintenance projects. As far as I know, we haven't used any of that money for many, many years. So should something happen where we need to have money above and beyond the $150,000 for emergency repairs or an emergency maintenance issue, we do have a capital reserve fund that we can tap into. The warrant article for the turf field is recommended at $60,000. These dollars will come from unexpended funds at the end of the year. If the funds are not available, then we will not be able to put them in the capital reserve. If the voters continue to support the article, we will have the money to replace the field in 2024, which is a projected date for replacement. Our revenues for the coming year are projected to be lower. Adequacy aid, which is a state grant, will be lower due to both lower enrollment and the calculations based on those students eligible for free and reduced lunch. The projection is that we will receive $503,720 less. As we pay down the principal on the Kingswood Complex building project bond, we receive less in building aid. Next year, we will receive approximately $57,151 less than we did this year. Equally important is the calculation of the tax rate is the amount of money returned to the general fund. Each year, the school district returns the entire fund balance back to the towns. This past year, with schools closing in March, the district had a much larger fund balance, and we were able to return $3,965,339 to the taxpayers. This helped reduce taxes. However, returning the money has the unfortunate effect of artificially inflating the percent increase in the tax rate the following year. This year, we will return the fund balance to the towns as we always do. However, we will not have the large sum available to return to the towns this year, since our expenses have not been decreased by the pandemic, they have increased instead. The substantial decreases in projected revenues and the likely effect on the tax rate played a significant role in the decision to cut back on so many areas of the proposed budget. The purpose of presenting a default budget is to give the voters an understanding of what the budget would look like should the proposed operating budget be voted down. RSA 4013 is the official ballot law, also known as SB 2. It is this RSA that determines what is to be included as part of a default budget. A default budget contains the appropriations in the operating budget authorized for the previous year, reduced and/or increased by obligations mandated by law, or previously incurred, such as debt service or contracts previously approved in the specific amount. One-time expenditures are not included in a default budget. The proposed budget is $56,220,379. The default budget is $56,218,233. The default budget is $2,145 lower than the proposed budget. This provides an example of what an incredibly frugal budget this is, with the default budget and the proposed budget being so close. There are some important dates coming up you will want to be aware of. January 12th, tomorrow, is the last day of petition warrant articles. January 25th is the last day to post the warrant, budget, and default budget. And January 30th is the deliberative session. And voting is on March 9th. The filing period for school board members is January 20th through January 29th. This year, Julianne Cardinal, Tim Eldridge, and myself are up for re-election. If you have any questions that have not been answered or comments about the budget, please call or email the SAU office or one of the members of the Finance Committee. We are more than happy to answer your questions about the budget. So, are there any questions from the board members on the proposed budget at this point? Okay, hearing none, I would accept the motion to accept the budget as proposed, and that would be the budget that is then presented at the deliberative session. Moved by Krista. Seconded by Tim. Okay, any other comments on the budget? Okay, all those in favor. Krista? Julianne? Tim?
Yes.
Wendy? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes aye as well. Okay, thank you very much for that. Great work by everyone on putting the budget together as best we could. The next is the adoption of the warrants themselves. You have a copy of the warrants, I believe. And again, let me see if I can find my copy here. Okay, thank you. Okay, basically there are three articles besides the voting, and there are some questions about where voting is going to be held, and we'll have that discussion a little bit later. because of the pandemic, all the towns are trying to maintain the proper social distancing and all for voting, and a few towns have made a couple of requests, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So the first articles are the elections of the school board members as outlined, and the school district moderator for 1 year, and those will be at the voting booth in March on that Tuesday. Then Article 2, which is the $60,000 capital reserve fund for the turf field. Article 3 would be the $150,000 maintenance article. And then Article 4, which is the last article, would be the budget itself. So those are the three main articles that you can be voting on in addition to the school board members. So I would entertain a motion to adopt the warrant as it's presented. Okay, moved by Tim.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve the warrant articles. Krista? Julianne? Yes. Tim?
Yes.
Wendy? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Yes. The motion is to approve the warrant articles as presented? Okay, that's okay.
So yes.
Yes, thank you. And chair votes aye as well. Okay, the next item basically is to decide who's going to speak on which articles at the deliberative session. The first one then would be on the turf field. Who would like to speak about the turf field? Julianne? Okay, Julianne will do the turf field. Oh, that's yours, I think. The second one would be the maintenance article. Who would like to, maintenance? Okay, Jim Pittman will talk about the maintenance article. And unless somebody raises their hand, I'll do the budget. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Okay, all right, I'll do the budget presentation, thank you. All right, so Kathy, the next thing on the agenda is the school calendar for 21-22.
All right, thank you, Jack. This school calendar that we're bringing forward is very similar to past years. We begin after Labor Day, which is important for our business community, and we have professional development for the teachers prior to that, and some introductory activities for students. One thing I do want to talk about is that when we had our we had a snow cancellation this year. Parents gave us some feedback about having the first day of snow be a true cancellation versus a remote day. So in looking at this calendar, if the board decides that you would like to have a snow day versus a remote day on the first day, then that brings the last day of school to the 21st instead of the 20th. Other than that, I don't think there are a lot of differences in the calendar. I think we're fortunate that things align a little bit better than they have in past years, so we don't have a real late finish date, which has been a problem for some families in the past. So the main issue, I think, is deciding what you'd like to do about the snow day versus if you'd like a remote day, which would end us on the 20th, or a snow day, which would end us on the 21st.
Okay, any comments on the calendar for 21-22? Any changes or any comments on this calendar? Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I think regarding the snow day, you might recall we got a number of emails from parents expressing disappointment that they did not get a snow day and that it was a remote day. So it seems that sampling, there's at least a certain interest in having that. So I guess I would lean towards having a snow day available.
Okay,
Thank you.
that sounds good. Tim?
And my only comment would be if we could consider going back before Labor Day. I know that that's kind of taboo to say, but using the 1st and 2nd, that Wednesday, Thursday, just because that last week in June, a lot of the kids are already heading off to camp and that sort of stuff. So just trying to, again, make some sort of accommodation here. I would recommend that we use that 1st and 2nd.
Tim, the reason that we don't start before Labor Day is because of the business community. Our business community really relies on some of our students to staff their businesses. And the other thing is I've talked with a number of people in the business community about this, and once the buses start to roll, there's just a different feeling within the community. And there's a real concern about starting before Labor Day will impact the businesses. And I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah, I certainly understand that, and I think they would end up feeling it on the end of June as well. Buses still out rolling. I think if we could potentially use those 2 days, it would make the transition into summer go a little easier. Just my suggestion.
Any other input? Okay, hearing no other input, do we want to move to approve this budget? Do we want to table it until next month? What do we want to do with this? Again, I think the sooner we get it out to the other communities that are involved with the vocational center and all the sending districts, they can certainly prepare their budgets as well, their calendars as well. So, any other input?
I did. Mm-hmm. Yep, and they were fine with it. There was some discussion about the snow day, but nothing that was overwhelming in terms of a consensus within the ranks. So the only other thing that I would add as far as the starting after Labor Day is we've also had concerns from parents about going late into June. I hear what you're saying. I guess that's argument, Tim. Yeah. We have had parents concerned about going late into June, but this is a calendar where that doesn't happen because we're able to start a little bit earlier. If Labor Day were later, then it would be more of an issue because that would push us later. So we don't have a late Labor Day to deal with, and we also have remote days that we're using instead of adding on days at the end. So I think that does help parents in June.
Yes, Jim.
Just a quick question. Hopefully, by the time we're starting that next school year, we will have overcome the restrictions of the COVID. Would we benefit from a couple of extra days to get facilities ready to go back to, normal spacing for desks and all that sort of thing?
I think that's a good question, Jim, but folks will have all summer long to do that. Summer in our schools for custodians is just a massive undertaking. They just clean every corner, wax every floor, do different room arrangements, but they do have the summer to do that, so I think we should be all set.
Okay, thank you.
And I guess my last comment would be, again, looking at those 2 days, seems like at sometimes, it was just yesterday, I was in school myself, but it's actually been a while. But I remember as you get close to the beginning of June, as a student, you start to shut down. And I'm sure as other educators, you see that with the students. But certainly going into it in the fall, they're more eager to, engage in the classes. So again, I'm suggesting that we use those 2 days. So I don't know if you need a formal motion.
Well, whatever if you want to make a motion to start, prior to Labor Day, we can certainly, make that motion and see where if it passes or not. The other thing with this calendar, which is good in a way because of Christmas being falling on a Saturday, the week off is just the six days as opposed to 7 or 8 or 9 days, depending on where Christmas falls. So that helps this calendar a little bit, the way it is toward the end of the year anyway. But if you'd like to make a motion, and if we get a second, that's fine.
So I'll make the motion to change the calendar to include Wednesday the 1st and Thursday the 2nd as school days. So it would end on Friday the 17th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
actually, it'd be Thursday the 16th with the potential of a snow day on the 17th.
Okay. Do we have a second for that? And you two, Charlene and Wendy, you've heard that discussion? Okay. Okay. Tim made a motion to start school before Labor Day, starting on the September 1st and 2nd, as opposed to starting on Tuesday the 7th. That way, ending the school year potentially on the 16th of June instead of the 20th. And we're looking for either a second or it will not, the motion will just fail. So do we have a second on that motion? Seeing none, the motion does not move forward. I would then entertain a motion if there's no other questions or concerns about the calendar as presented, that we vote on the calendar as it is presented, and I'd entertain a motion on that. Yes.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Jim Pittman to accept the calendar as presented for 21-22. Is there a second? Second. Dr. Jim seconds. Okay, so we'll take a roll call vote on approving the calendar for the 21-22 school year. Krista?
Yes.
Julianne?
Yes.
Tim? Wendy? Dr. Jim?
No.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes aye, so that is 7-2 positive plus. So the motion passes. So that is our adopted calendar for 21-22.
Hey, thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is we have had several requests for the use of schools for town meeting and voting. Wolfeboro has asked to use our facilities for a deliberative session. New Durham has asked to use New Durham School for their deliberative session. Tufton Borough, I think, has asked, is it for deliberative session, Jack?
For their voting.
For voting,
For voting,
okay.
yeah.
And then Effingham for town meeting and for voting, which would be March 9th, of course. So it's really up to this board to decide whether or not you feel that an exception should be made for the towns. It's certainly a different situation, I think, with the towns than it is for other kinds of activities. So that is the request from the 4 towns.
Any comments? I mean, my feeling is as long as the towns, certainly our deliberative session on January 30th will be in this building. We generally get 75 to 100 people, which we can fit in the auditorium with proper social distancing, and that seems to work fine. I think if these towns can stay within the guidelines of the 6-foot social distancing, mask wearing, and all the other protocols in place, and the restrictions, they're going to be required to do proper cleaning and all of that after their meetings, with our supervision, I'm assuming. That, you know, I think for the municipalities to be able to use our facilities in these particular cases makes some sense. Whether it be this facility, Tuftonboro is talking about their gymnasium for voting only. Tuftonboro, I believe, may be looking at moving their town meeting to a later date, depending on how things play out. And again, the deliberative session for the town of Wolfeboro makes sense. I think, again, they get 125 people or so at their deliberative session. So I think that makes some sense, but certainly listen to any comments from the rest of the board.
Jack, one of the things that everyone who spoke with me or sent me an email discussed was they're very willing to do all of the cleaning procedures based on our standards. So that shouldn't be an issue. It shouldn't be extra work for our own custodians.
Okay, did Wendy and Charlene, did you hear that part of the discussion? I just wanted to know if you were listening to that part of the discussion about allowing the municipalities to use the school facilities. Yeah. Yeah?
It's my understanding that the elections were to wear masks.
Yeah.
Require that there's absolutely no entrance without a mask.
That would certainly be my understanding. We're requiring everybody that enters our buildings to have a mask on, and I don't think there'll be any exception to that. Yeah. Any other comments? Jim Pittman?
Did you just say doctor? I didn't know if you had us confused because they're two good-looking guys across from each other
I thought
here.
Dr. Jim was going to say something, but you put your hands up. So.
Are we talking specifically about these 3 events? I think for myself, because of the nature of them, I would be in favor of allowing this to go forward. But is our intent to still have very strict access to these spaces for others, and maybe they would be also determined on a case-by-case basis?
Yes, that is the understanding, right? If these are strictly for the municipalities that have asked for these specific items and no other change to our prior vote for restrictive use of the buildings.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that will require a little bit of discussion is Effingham has requested March 9th, which is a voting, that's their voting day, but it's also a school day. So as a board, you'll have to decide what you'd like to do about that, whether you want that day to be, to switch the remote days for that building. That's a possibility. But that's definitely something that you want to decide because it will impact instruction in the school year.
Yeah, Tuftonboro, we need a 2 for voting day, so we Effingham and Tuftonboro for
Okay.
for that day. New Durham has said no at this point. They're going to
They're
use.
using their community room?
Yeah. Yeah. So that is certainly a question whether we for those days. Tim did make a suggestion before, which certainly might make sense. That if we are using that day for voting, could we switch If we're in the hybrid model, then A and B, the A Monday and Tuesday to do Monday and Wednesday that week for that 1 week. If that would make sense. That way the kids could still be in school for the 2 days, and we wouldn't have any other changes then. And again, for just that one single day. So that's something, but I think first we need to decide if we're going to approve the requests of the municipalities for use of the buildings on those specific days, and then we can talk about that particular Tuesday. Okay, Tim makes a motion to allow the town municipalities to use the buildings on those days.
Second.
Mr. Pittman, because I saw his hand up. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote then on this. Krista?
Yes.
Julianne?
Yes.
Tim? Yes. Wendy? You know what we are voting on, right? I just want to make sure you're in the loop here. So, Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Certainly. Oh.
Do this.
Do that?
Yeah, I can see you when you do that.
Is the motion, I didn't hear that the, buildings, you know, asks, seen, did the motion that, and if, should it include that?
It was certainly intended that way, and I would ask if the people making that motion would add those restrictions or standard safety protocols to be in place and handle through all of that. So that will be part of the motion, yes.
And Charlene, if also you should know that as I was approached about this, right up front, the town said that they'd be very willing to do all of that, to adhere to the safety protocols and to do the cleaning after. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and we will include that as part of the motion.
Yes.
Okay, and chair votes aye as well. Thank you. All right, so we're good with that. Now, the discussion on that Tuesday, what do we think we want to do? And would Kathy, would that be just those two towns, those two schools?
Well, I think we could do it that way.
Yeah, I think rather than upset the apple cart, if we're in the hybrid model at that point, that we just switch the A cohort in Tuftonboro and Effingham for that one day. Everyone else could stay okay with the Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday.
So it would be switching cohort A to Wednesday instead of Tuesday.
From Monday.
But
Monday,
although the complication with that is that all the students, now that I think this through a little bit more, is that all the students are together on that Wednesday. So because we have a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, everyone is together on the Wednesday. So if we change that Tuesday, not everyone can be together unless we also change cohort B, and I don't know how we would do that. They would. I'm just thinking how that would affect the Thursday, Friday schedule. So if we would have to change Thursday for the B group. See what I'm saying? Because one of those, so we'd have to
Okay.
it's a little bit more complicated because it involves two cohorts.
All right, let's do this then. Since we have a little bit of time to work on the details, we can make that official decision at our next board meeting, because this isn't until the March, the March election. So we have until the first of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't you just do
Sure.
what you need to do?
That's great. Because I think if everyone feels that the town should be able to use the building, then we'll just work out the details.
Okay.
I just need to think about all the ramifications because it involves the two cohorts.
Okay. All right, let's plan on Kathy just taking care of whatever she needs to do to make that election day work for everyone. Jim?
Just a quick point of order. Tim, would you mind using your microphone? I can't hear a thing you're saying.
Hello, I'm
Yeah,
here.
much better.
I'll keep it right here. But it likes to wander off.
You gotta tighten the screw there or something. Okay.
Gonna hear me sing.
All right, so the next item on the agenda then is the slight change to the 2021 calendar, and is that what we just discussed?
Nope. This is this year's calendar, and I wanted to talk about snow days.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had a surprise announcement by the governor that he was all in favor of no remote day for a snow day, but of course none of the superintendents knew that. So, and we actually had something in the works to do a surprise snow day, but anything that we would do in that way would mean that we'd need an alteration to the calendar. So in order to do that, I need approval from the board. So what I'm looking for is approval from the board to do a snow day versus a remote day, but that will in fact change the end date of school. So the payoff is it will be a fun day for the kids, but it will be one more day at the end of the school year.
I would say at this point, we already missed that first snow day as being the.
Well, we already
snow
missed
day.
the first snow day, but
So-
the sort of the idea of it was to have a surprise day for kids, which of course, if you do it at a public meeting, that kind of, you can't do it that way. But
Yeah, with, let's see, the 22nd is the scheduled the last day.
Yeah.
Push it out to
Right.
Wednesday, the 23rd, seems super late to me. But I would say we missed the boat.
Well, because and this year is unfortunate because we started school so late anyway.
Right.
You know, I don't know if it makes, for that one extra day at the end of the year, it's a half day. That last day is a half day anyway.
you know, we really did have I think an overwhelming response from parents that they really wanted to see their kids have a traditional snow day. They remember what it was like when they had a snow day when they were kids. And, you know, I think there's something to that. But, you know, I understand there's a trade-off that it is, you know, it is one day later. So.
And I know this is being a hokey year and whatnot, but whether counting days or counting hours, there's still no wiggle room?
We're counting days because we're in a no man's land with remote and so.
Mr. Chair, I think in another topic, there has been much emphasis on the psychological benefits from certain activities for students that we've been suggested that we've taken away from them. I think a snow day has a lot of psychological benefit as well. You know, there are going to be a lot of kids who may not benefit from other activities, but everybody can love a snow day, especially if it's a 2-foot snowfall like we had. I feel like it has some merit, even though people hate it at the end of June.
Am I hearing a motion of some sort?
I would move that we allow for the snow day.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Jim Pittman and second by Dr. Jim, to add that snow day and one extra day at the end of the school year, or half day. Any other comments? Charlene? The motion is to add a snow day, which will lengthen the school year by 1 day. Okay, any other comments?
Well, I'll just say, if it doesn't snow anymore, then it becomes a mood issue. But what do you think the chances are?
Who knows? Okay. Okay, all those in favor? Krista?
Yes.
Julianne? Tim?
No.
Wendy?
No.
Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Dana?
No.
Chair votes aye. 5-4, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is discussion on substitute teacher pay.
Yes. We, in the past, have touched on the subject of substitute pay. I think the board has heard me talk before about the situation as far as staffing goes, and we're having a very difficult time finding subs. We also held, and I have to give credit to Susan Merrill for setting up a virtual job fair. We had, and it was well advertised in flyers that went home, online, in the newspaper, and no one signed up. So right now, people are not flocking to the schools to be substitutes. Our substitute pay is low. However, the dilemma is our paraeducator entry-level pay is also low. So if we offer our substitutes more, then we're jeopardizing our paraeducators in terms of recruiting paraeducators. So I'd like to have the Finance Committee take a look at how we might look at this a little bit more creatively, whether we have a couple of tiered options, whether we have a teacher tier and a support staff tier, or we do a stipend for so many days of substituting. I think we need to do something, but I think it's going to require a lot of deliberation and taking a look at a lot of data. So I'd recommend that our Finance Committee take a look at that.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I think it makes sense maybe for Finance Committee to look at all the details that are involved first, and then bring a recommendation back to the board. I think that makes sense. So if that's the case, the Finance Committee can set up a meeting maybe prior to next board meeting or somewhere in between, where we can discuss this and come back with a recommendation on what we should do. Yes,
Hi,
Wendy.
Can you tell me, what percentage of
We,
the school year?
no increase. We haven't increased our substitute rate for years. It's $75 a day. So,
As far as the utilizing the subs?
oh, what the increase in percentage utilization? Oh, gosh. I don't have that percentage, Wendy, but I can tell you that there's a dramatic increase this year obviously because of the pandemic and what we've been dealing with as far as people needing to quarantine. So we have principals that are going into classrooms. We have, in a pinch, we've had to do a remote situation. We have sometimes, which we really shouldn't, have paras pinch hitting when teachers aren't there. So we're doing everything that we can do to keep the schools open, but it's really hard.
Okay, thank you.
Charlene?
Can we, as the pay is structured in at least the surrounding district, an idea of where we
Yeah, we are, You know, there are some districts that are offering $100 a day. There are some districts that are offering 65, and we're at 75. So I think districts have been looking at it more specifically this year because everybody's in dire straits. But we certainly can do that, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, so the Finance Committee will meet after this meeting briefly to try to set up a time, even if it's just before the next board meeting, where we can sit down and go through all the details and then come up with a recommendation. Okay? All right, sounds good.
Great. So
Okay, next up.
Yep, the next item is the COVID-19 update. And probably the best place to start here has been with some of the recent changes to the CDC guidelines. We have made a few changes to our reopening plan. The CDC guidelines, there are many, many things that remain the same within the guidelines, and just a couple of things that have changed. The 6-foot guidelines are everywhere. They have taken out the 3-foot references, so the 6-foot guidelines are the standard right now for the CDC. Last August, when we did our plan, we thought that we might need to close the schools from 2 to 5 days. That was one of the standards that was recommended. But in working with the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services and with our local experts and doing our own contact tracing versus having DHHS do the contact tracing, we've been able to keep our schools open. So we've not had to do the 2 to 5 day closing, so I think we can safely remove that from our reopening plan. Also, CDC and the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services are recommending a 10-day quarantine, and after consultation with our local experts, we'll be following the 10-day quarantine, which should help with our staffing needs and also get students back to school more quickly. And there are a lot of decisions to be made tonight, so I think probably the best place to start is with a review of data, and I hope the gentleman is here that was asking about data, and you can find the metrics that were developed quite some time ago for community transmission, the level of school impact, and the overall rubric for decision-making that uses data. So I'm going to start with that. So as far as community transmission goes, Carroll County is at the 239.36 new infections per 100,000, which puts us in the highest risk level for transmissions in schools. Stratford County is at 381.22 per 100,000, again in the highest risk of transmission for schools. Statewide, there have been 736 cases of COVID for students under the age of 18. So if we look at our own towns, currently Brookfield is 1 to 4 because that's how it's reported by DHHS. Effingham is 19. Middleton is 5. New Durham is 5. Ossipee is 15. Tuftonboro is 5. And Wolfeboro is 13. If you look at the cumulative total for our towns, Brookfield is 33, Effingham is 47, Middleton is 43, New Durham is 83, Ossipee is 110, Tuftonboro is 40, and Wolfeboro is 138. So we have had a total in the district of 48 positive cases. Approximately half of those cases have been students. Since Christmas, school has been closed. However, when school was in session, our student absenteeism was variable. If you look at our absenteeism across the district, it looks pretty good. But what happens is we have pockets in schools, and that's because of the way the virus is being transmitted. So we might have a group at the high school or a group in New Durham. And that has made it somewhat difficult for teachers to keep students up to date when they have more students that are out of their classes than are in their classes due to needing to quarantine. But I think our teachers have done an amazing job keeping our students up to date. Our staff absenteeism, it's the same thing. If you look at our numbers across the district, they look low, and that's great. But if you have a little pocket in a school, it impacts that school to a very significant extent. So that's where you have principals in the classrooms, or you might have to have a remote class for a day, or if in the case of the high school, you might have to have a remote class by one teacher. But by and large, I think we've been able to keep the schools open, which has really been our goal, which I think is really great. And that's really not the case. As much as we've heard about other schools, that's really not the case in schools in our region. I meet with the superintendents monthly, and I know that in our region, several districts have been off and on remote because of the transmission in their districts. Newfound, Guilford, Moulton Borough, Interlakes, and there are more than that. But so I feel really very, very pleased that we've been able to keep our schools open. I also want to compliment our staff members. They have done an awesome job. We have staff members that actually have contracted COVID, and some of them have done well and haven't been super sick, but some of them have not done so well. So, I think that's something for us to be mindful of. We've had some that have had to go to the emergency room for complications, and yet these people are here and willing to do what they're doing for our kids. And so I am just so impressed and so thankful that these are the kind of people that we have in our district. So I think that's it for the COVID update. And I think we have our athletic director with us tonight, Aaron House, for a discussion on sports. And I want to thank Aaron for all of his hard work to keep our athletes safe. The plans that he has developed to promote safety have been excellent and in line with district guidelines, state guidelines, and CDC guidelines. And I think it's important to note that the decisions that have been made about athletics have not been in any way related to any deficiencies in these plans. The plans that have been developed in the athletic department have been absolutely exemplary. I also want to thank Aaron for the presentation that he's going to make tonight, because he's done an alternative proposal for grades 7 through 12 that has provisions for keeping our athletes safe and would allow our athletes to have contact with their peers and coaches, have socialization with their friends, which is very important, as several people have mentioned tonight, and at the same time improve their skills. So Aaron, thank you very much for bringing this proposal forward and for all that you've done to keep our athletes safe. And
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Aaron, I do have what you have distributed me with the most recent information, so I'm going to pass that along.
Thank you, Kathy. Mr. Widmer, I would like to have your blessing on reading an opening statement, if I could.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Thank you. Good evening. For those here tonight and the folks watching from home, I'm Aaron House, and I'm the athletic administrator for the Governor Wentworth Regional School District. On behalf of the Kingswood Athletic Department, the student athletes' families, and the staff for whom we serve, I'd like everyone to know that the athletic department comes to this meeting tonight not to complain, but with one goal: letting our kids play. As stated in previous meetings, for kids who like to move and participate in athletics, the ability to play is critical to their physical, social, and mental health. I would be remiss to not ask that as a group, we thoroughly consider revisiting winter sports this evening.
The nature of my request should only be expected. As the athletic administrator for the district, it's my responsibility to make sure that I do everything within my abilities to deliver athletic programming for student athletes at Kingswood. The proposal that I believe you now have in front of you is to considering allowing the athletic department to begin intramurals immediately. At the high school level, with this intramural option, the ability to still participate in the NHIAA end-of-season tournament is part of the proposal. The full winter sports model that was recommended at the November 9th meeting that was approved still has my full support. I'm hoping that we have the opportunity to discuss both plans as realistic possibilities. Our athletic policies related to operating athletics during this pandemic are a source of pride. Our school board and community should know that policies constructed here at Kingswood have been shared and utilized by many schools across the state. I hope that tonight we have the opportunity to discuss and answer any questions that may have formulated since the December meeting. I would ask the board to utilize the resources in the room whenever possible. Several professionals are present to serve as subject matter experts. Thank you, and I look forward to a productive conversation and answering any questions that you may have with the proposal in front of you.
Aaron, do you want to talk about the proposal?
Yeah.
Got it. Is it the first time that everyone's been seeing the proposal? Is right now the first time they received it?
We had some glimpses of it in the past, and
Okay.
I think it's important for the two to know exactly what the proposal is all about.
Yeah, sure. So this proposal, essentially, again, our goal is to try to provide athletic programming for the student athletes, grades 7 through 12. The benefit, obviously, is to focus on the physical, mental, and social wellness of our students. So what we're trying to do with this particular proposal, if we cannot return to full winter sports like we had before, is obviously utilizing all the most recent COVID-19 safety guidelines. That would include CDC guidelines, NFHS, the NHIAA, state of New Hampshire guidelines. We would also make sure that all the off-site home activities, alpine ski, Nordic ski, ice hockey, would adhere to all Kingswood Athletics return to play guidelines, along with meeting guidelines set forth by those host sites. At the February 8th meeting, I would like to be able to seek approval from the superintendent and/or the school board about playing a modified interscholastic schedule. That would be our Lakes Region school schedule, beginning February 15th. Should regional games be allowed, varsity teams would like to be permitted to participate in the NHIA tournaments that are scheduled for late February, early March, just as we did for fall sports. As we've stated in previous proposals, we know that athletics is not mandated. Families are choosing to participate. They're not required to participate. Athletic programming, we believe, should not be impacted by a decision for students to be remote, hybrid, charter, or homeschooled. If and when a case is discovered within a team or a program, action should be taken with that sole team. Should learning be moved to 100% remote, we'd like to see athletic activities continue, as the participants would arguably be in a tighter Kingswood bubble. Any confirmed case in any Kingswood bubble would result in a pause and quarantine. It says here for a period of 14 days. Obviously, with the adjustments, we would move that down to 10 days. And then the last bullet there, depending on data trends for our district, region, and/or state, the superintendent reserves the right to cancel, suspend, reinstate, and/or close an individual program's intramural season or the entire athletic department.
Thank you, Aaron. Comments by the board?
We missed the window for the NHIA regular season.
No, we have not.
Julianne?
Are we looking for a motion to start winter sports effective immediately, or are we looking for a motion for this modified? We have either choice.
Whatever you make.
Good.
So then I make a motion for winter sports to go back into effect, effective immediately, or as soon as the students return.
Second.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to disregard this particular proposal and go back to winter sports as in complete reversal of our prior motion. That's basically what the motion is. Okay, discussion on the board. Yes, Jim?
I guess I don't understand what the impact of that is. We were looking at this proposal here from Aaron currently, but is the motion on the floor to basically throw this away and go back to some previous
The
plan?
motion on the floor right now, this one isn't being brought us forward as a motion yet. We're not ignoring this completely. The motion on the floor is to return to full interscholastic sports for the winter season. That means, basically as though nothing ever happened in the past. We're full interscholastic no matter where the kids are playing and whatever. So that's the motion on the floor at this point. Okay, the motion on the floor right now, Charlene, is that we return to full interscholastic sports and completely reverse the motion, the vote on the board from December 7th. That's the motion on the floor right now.
Right, at some point I have that relates to this, so I will text you and
Related to this?
you can figure out how you handle that.
Okay.
So just to be clear, if we vote to go back with full sports like initially planned, prior to the vote last meeting, all the restrictions, the COVID restrictions that we've seen through the fall, and other paperwork that you've given us would still be in place, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
We just have no control if our students go to a different school that has different restrictions, different, any guidelines that we don't have. They can do what they want to do. Our students would still obviously wear masks, do social distancing, whatever they needed to do, but we have no control of what happens with the other schools that we may play.
But at
I
this
can
point,
comment that all the Lakes Region schools, along with Division II schools, have agreed to wear masks in all interscholastic play, hockey and basketball and wrestling.
Right, so our students will be required to wear masks, but other students may not be.
Yeah.
Yes, Dana?
No,
Mr. Place, I supported fall sports because New Hampshire IAA was very helpful in developing a modified schedule, which would have been local for fall sports. But on November 9th, you explained that that was not the case for winter sports. And then I think things have changed because the Conway Board also voted for winter sports based on regional play and then going to tournament play. So did something change from November 9th to today?
so just two things to address. Number one, as I said before, all schools that we would be playing, Lakes Region schools and Division II schools, have agreed to wear masks. I just want to be clear about that. So all schools that would be playing. And I believe if we go back to that meeting that we had in November, what you would have heard me say was, we can play a local schedule in all sports but girls ice hockey. I believe that's what I had said. So after that meeting where you approved winter sports, all the athletic directors built the schedule. We had a local schedule ready to go for all of our sports, with the exception of girls ice hockey, because there just isn't enough local teams for us to play.
Well, as you know, the board was hammered over the decision to cancel winter sports. But in that case, back on November 9th, I didn't have the complete story or the complete vision when I voted to discontinue winter sports. I have now changed my mind because it looks like we're more on the fall sports procedures, which makes me feel a lot better. So, where are we now as far as sports, intramural practice, and students playing each other? Is that happening? What exactly is happening in the school buildings?
As of right now, there is no Kingswood team playing or practicing. When the decision was made to cancel sports, we shut down sports.
But then we went to intramural.
Not yet, Dana. That's what we're voting on tonight. That's the proposal
Everything is
being brought forward tonight.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Aaron, if this particular vote passes, what teams would we be playing under this scenario? Is it still the same Lakes Region teams, or are we looking at distant playing? In other words, if this passes, it basically opens the door for the full sports season. Who are we going to be playing?
Yeah, I can certainly answer that. I do need to, just to be perfectly honest, there was some damage done. You know, as soon as other teams or schools heard that we weren't going to be participating in winter sports, a lot of those schools moved on to find other opponents on dates when we were scheduled with them. Officials also moved on. So what I would say, you know, if we were able to pick up where we left off, so to speak, I would be having some action meetings with my coaching staff, action meetings with our parents and student athletes. We'd be looking to probably practice for 2 weeks and then start games shortly thereafter. That gives me time to try to secure officials. It gives me time to try to schedule those local teams. So Jack, to answer your question directly, all of the Lakes Region schools that we played in the fall was who we were going to play in the winter. So Prospect Mountain, Laconia, Plymouth, Kennett, Interlakes, Guilford. Again, the only exception to that is girls ice hockey.
Okay, and that would still be the same group of teams going forward, regardless of which proposal we're talking about. If we're talking about if this particular one failed and we went with the intramural with the option of going to the Lakes Region, you're still talking about the same teams.
We would look to still play the same teams. It would just be that, you know, we would be starting games 2 weeks kind of after what I'm projecting today, I guess.
Okay.
Just one comment.
Dana, go ahead.
One comment on the motion. The motion is to go back to the
Interscholastic program.
But that's, I have a feeling that doesn't include the local Lakes Region element.
Okay, would you want to modify the motion to return to winter sports based on the local team program as specified in
Right,
at the November presentation?
And then the varsity teams being able to go on to tournament
The
play.
the open tournament would still be based on, based on things being okay, is in the COVID world, obviously, that the teams with approval of the superintendent and or the school board would be able to participate in the open tournament format when that happens. So basically, you'd be modifying the motion to have the teams play with the local teams as specified by Aaron tonight and in the November presentation.
With the exception of the girls.
With the exception of the girls' hockey. That way, if we gave him approval, he can't just say, well, we decided we're going to play Dover or Nashua or some other team. We want to restrict it to
Modify.
basically our circle of teams.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right, so the motion basically is to approve going back to a full winter program with Aaron setting up games with the local or regional teams, I guess is the best way to do that, except for girls hockey. Okay.
Before we,
Yes, go ahead. Yes. That's okay.
Say that
Yeah, he's already presented that, and this yes, he did.
okay, so now
That proposed, yeah. Well, no, that proposal right now is on hold because a different motion was made, and the motion basically was made rather than the intramural program, which basically sets any team play back an additional 2 weeks, is to reestablish the full winter sports program as though we hadn't canceled it back in December, which allows the athletes to start practicing right now and start playing much faster. Again, modified to playing oh, go ahead, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. While I'm still thinking of it, and thank you to Mr. DeNitto for reminding me, Nordic ski, that's another sport. It is 100% outside, but there is a little bit more traveling with that sport. I don't have that schedule in front of me, but again, that is a sport that would be all outside for their activities.
Yeah, and again, I think as long as the students are following our guidelines, I think that makes sense. So he was just bringing up the Nordic skiing, which would be involved, maybe a little outside of our area because of skiing and the slopes that they have to go to and all of that. But
okay, so is that part of the
yes, it's all part of the consideration. In other words, all of our students would be following all of our protocol. We'd be playing strictly I'm going to say Lakes Region teams. Our regional teams, so there'll be no long distance teams, and they can start playing quicker by doing this rather than going through the intramural process and then coming back for approvals and all this kind of stuff to play the local teams. So that's basically the motion that's on the floor right now, is to go back to the full winter schedule. Again, strictly local teams except for women's hockey, which we can't do, because there's just not enough teams.
Nordic.
And Nordic.
And Nordic skiing, obviously, which is outside, all outside. And we understand the skiing is certainly, that was one of the issues that came up right away, that skiing, why is skiing even included? Because it's all outside, and so it's different. But this is not the intramural program.
for some reason that
Well, nothing for us is taking place at all.
Okay,
But,
so,
but hockey is,
hockey not,
well, hockey itself is being done. We're not playing any hockey. Our students are not playing hockey, but hockey is happening around the state.
okay, so,
The restrictions on hockey, from what I gather in New Hampshire, is you couldn't play hockey across state lines. Is that correct, Aaron? So New Hampshire teams can play New Hampshire teams.
so do we? So I don't wanna. But do you have any information that,
You get co-
Here, Kathy can answer that.
No, we don't, Charlene. The information that we get when we're not in session is really limited. So we do have a handful of students that, today, that I received information about, but as far as I know, they're not connected to hockey.
okay.
Okay, Aaron, any more input?
I have more data if there's questions, but no, I have no more input at this time.
Krista?
Aaron, I really appreciated the, your AD survey, and I think that has helped make an impression on me on how other schools around the area are handling things, so thank you for that. The question I have as we're going in and talking about picking up and playing winter sports again has to do with if the schools, if our district goes fully remote, then will we put our sports on pause until we're back into hybrid? There's something on the intramural thing that you have laid out about, I think it's about sports would continue even if we were fully remote.
Yeah, actually on the back side of that survey too is a graph that shows that.
Yeah.
And basically says, is your school allowing sports to continue during planned remote learning? Now, there's a question of planned or unplanned, but planned remote learning, allowing students, coaches, and teams full access to athletic facilities. And on that particular part of the survey, 85% said yes, they'd allow their
If it's a
sports.
planned one.
And 15% said no. So in that particular survey, if the school is in a remote situation, the athletics could continue. 85% said the athletics could continue, but that's a planned remote. Now, I think we might want to have a discussion on if we all of a sudden have to go full remote because of an outbreak, does that mean full remote for everyone? And in my estimation, it would. If we all of a sudden had to pull the plug and say we have to go full remote across the district, that would have to include all students under all circumstances. Clubs couldn't be in the building. Nobody else could be in the building. Now, again, if it's one or two classrooms, that's a different story. But if we have to shut down the district, that includes all sports. I mean, I can't see any other way out of that. I don't think it would make sense for us to say nobody can be in the building except
So
for the sports teams.
we would simply hit the pause button again.
Right.
I agree with the chair.
Go ahead, Dana.
I agree with the chair. So therefore, we may want to remove that one comment that if we have to go remote, then sports will continue. That, I don't know if that's going to be an amendment later.
Well, yeah, I think there certainly has to be some clarification there. If one or two classrooms in a high school have to go remote, I'm not saying we'd have to shut down sports, but if all of the high school and all the middle school has to go remote, then I think sports has to be included in that. Aaron?
That is my approach with that as well. Any planned remote, and I believe that's where most athletic directors are filling that out. We're in planned remote right now, and that's why so many schools are allowing their kids to continue athletics. If it's unplanned, you'll see the survey is 50-50. It's split. I, for one, would not be in favor of doing athletics in an unplanned remote situation.
Okay. Okay. Kathy?
Oh, I was just going to say that the intramural proposal, I think, has many positive features to it, and it does relate to the full winter sports schedule, because Aaron and I have had a lot of discussion about this, and some of the districts that are not engaged in winter sports right now are calling it a pause versus a cancel, which I think is, probably wise, because I don't think it was the intention of this board ever to say that there would never be winter sports should the situation improve. So one of the things that I like about the intramural proposal is the fact that it gives our kids all of the advantages of sports. The thing that's missing, and I realize how important this is the competition, but it gives the kids every other advantage, and it also allows the students to participate in interscholastic later on should things improve. So I just want to point that out, that I know that we're talking about full winter sports right now, but I don't want to have folks not look at the advantages of the interscholastic program.
Dr. Jim?
Is my microphone working?
Okay, hang on, Charlene. Let me get to Dr. Jim first, and then I'll get back to you, Charlene, okay?
Mine is basically a logistics question that Aaron probably have an answer for. Right now, for CDC guidelines, we're putting 13 kids on a bus. I know that there are more than 13 kids in the Alpine ski team. How are we handling that? Because, right now we have not a bus shortage. We have plenty of buses, but it's the drivers we don't have enough of.
Yeah, so prior to your December meeting, Coach Nealer had already communicated with her student athletes and her families, and of course she's the head coach for the Alpine ski team. And again, we had waived the transportation policy for fall sports, so anytime a parent could help us alleviate that pressure on the transportation department, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were in favor of that. So Coach had basically had the parents and kids understanding that it would be up to them to get to King Pine for their practices twice a week. Now, the way I left it with Coach was anyone that cannot get there, we need to know so we can provide busing for them.
That was the one I wanted to know about, Aaron, because when I emailed you, that was why I sent it, because I wanted to know what happens to the kids who can't get home transportation. And so Chris has got that kind of nailed down?
I believe if we were to move forward, we'll have that figured out very quickly.
Charlene?
Yeah.
Really impossible to have social distancing, so how is that going to be mitigated?
Yeah, Charlene, the masks obviously are an easy process. Social distancing with basketball obviously is impossible, and I think we have to take whatever precautions we can. Basketball, I think, is probably the most difficult. That and hockey, because those are contact sports. So there's really no easy way of doing social distancing on that. But if our If our athletes follow protocol as far as mask wearing, proper cleansing and all that stuff, that's the best we can hope for in any of these situations. If you look at what's happening in professional basketball, it's the same thing. I mean, they're not wearing masks at all, but there's sometimes people are coming and going off the court because that's the nature of the game. Aaron, go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, Aaron, did you want to say something?
I did not. I mean, I can certainly speak to the logic of playing basketball. I think that was a concern of Charlene's. And, again, when we presented winter sports in November, we talked about air exchange rates in those gymnasiums. We talked about making sure that kids were going to wear masks. We would limit the number of times that they are, playing body to body, man on man defense. I mean, you have to do certain things like that in practice. And, of course, when they get out there on the court to play a game, they're going to be playing a kid from another school. But again, as you said, Jack, we'll take every precaution necessary and hope for the best. I mean, that's all we can really do. I think my opinion on all this is it's here. COVID is here, and I think you can run away from it, or you can learn to work with it in the safest and most responsible manner possible. And that would be the goal of the athletic department.
Yeah. Krista, go ahead.
I did when we originally had a conversation. And I think part of that, we were on the heels of looking at what happened with the hockey team. Kids then needing to go on remote learning. And if that was like previews of coming attractions, I wasn't comfortable setting our kids up to potentially need to fix that. So I just want to explain why I was in favor of us putting a halt onto sports. I'm feeling more positive and more optimistic about it now. But one of the things I do want to bring up, because it's just been bothering me for a while, our exchanges. When we're having conversations or trying to make our points, and we're obviously trying to make our points, but some people would say, well, you are afraid of COVID, or you are afraid of this, or you are afraid of that. And my response is, no, I'm concerned about our kids. Kids. And I take some of those things because and I know we see it differently, but some people were seeing it as like the board was out to punish kids. The board was out to punish kids, and that was like the last thing the board would be doing. Instead, the board was out to protect kids' education. The board was out to protect kids' education and their lives. So I think part of the change for me is wanting people to understand that it's a change in the wording. It's a change in perspective. Some people said afraid, I say concern. Some people said punish, and I say protect. And none of those feelings have changed for me at all. Tonight, one of the things that was said is pretty much something to the effect that we were not seeing or hearing what some parents or the public was saying. And I don't think that's true at all. I think we were seeing and hearing very much what the public was saying, but we had the concern and protects as differences in how we are looking at it. But I also want to point out to people that there was what you were not seeing or hearing and what the board was seeing and hearing from people that were not supportive of starting up sports again. So, it's the debate back and forth. And I think one good thing about it from this whole exchange is that most of us can still respect and appreciate somebody else having a difference of opinion, and we all want what's best for the kids. So I would just say that some of the verbiage has been bothering me, and I know it was an attempt to make your point, but that was not the way the perception was, at least as far as I was concerned as a board member.
Excuse me. I don't want to speak out of turn, and I know there's a chance to speak at the end, but I know you're going to vote pretty soon. I just wanted to provide some insight on the basketball thing because...
Excuse me.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There's no public input right now. Sorry. Okay. Aaron, anything else you want to say?
No.
I guess, tell me the timing. If this vote is positive, what's the timing from your standpoint in getting things started?
The first thing we would do is oh, this thing's dropping on me now. First thing we would do is meet internally as the athletic department with the principals. We would consult with the athletic trainer, who's also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, to determine the amount of time that he believes kids should be practicing before we would enter in-scholastic competition, because we wouldn't want the kids to be doing stuff where they possibly would get injured. So there's a certain amount of buildup. A lot of the kids have been sitting around since early December, and we're going to need to take that time to make sure our athletes are ready to put on their uniforms and go compete for our community. So again, I would think 2 to 3 weeks for that. And then we would look to see who can play us. There may be some gaps. It could be people watching or here tonight thinking, oh, my kid's going to get to play all the games that we thought they were going to have. It may not be the case. We have to go find games, and we have to make sure that we're still following the same procedures that we had given to you for the fall and the winter season, where we're not only playing local schools, we're playing the same school during the same week. All right, because again, that way if there's an issue early in the week, both schools are aware of it, and we're able to shut it down and stop it there before it goes into the next week with new schools. So that would be our approach again with some of those games.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on the board? Okay, we're going to vote on the motion then to exactly what the motion is going to... Jim.
Yeah, that's what I was
Sorry.
going to ask. Could we just restate that so I know what we're voting on?
So let's see if we can make this motion correct. To return to the full winter sports schedule or program with the local regional schools as outlined in the presentation in November. Is that? With the exception of girls hockey and Nordic skiing. Does that cover us? Right, following all of our protocol, COVID protocol for our students. How does that sound? Good. Want to make sure we cover all the bases. Okay, all right, so there's a motion and a second on the floor to move this question forward. We're gonna, do you have something else you wanted to say first?
No, just a second.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna move forward. Krista? Julianne?
Yes.
Tim? Dr. Jim?
You forgot Wendy.
What's that?
Wendy's first.
I didn't hear you.
Wendy's before
I'm
me.
sorry, Wendy? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well, so it is 7-2, positive vote. So we return, Aaron, you can move forward with your sports program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is the school schedule. So as I'm sure everyone recalls, at the last meeting, the decision was that we would be remote through Martin Luther King Day and hybrid indefinitely, but I do believe that the board wanted to discuss this again tonight, so.
Okay, I can start the discussion if you'd like. My feeling right now is I think it's appropriate for us to remain remote until Martin Luther King Day. That's basically what we said we were going to do at the last meeting. I still think that's an appropriate position. I don't necessarily think we've seen a huge spike from the Christmas, New Year's break. However, the last information I got on when the last spike actually hit, the spike hit on December 8th. That was the top of the spike. Well, if you look at that, that was about 2.5 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. So we're not quite there yet with the people coming back after the New Year's break. So we may hit something different, but my feeling is we stay with the remote for the next week, which is the next 4 days for the most part. And on the 19th, my recommendation would be that we return to the hybrid model indefinitely. And that doesn't mean for the balance of the school year necessarily, but I think if we don't put a specific date on it, I think it makes a lot more sense. We're going to go back to remote. People can plan on that. And at our next meeting, if something changes, or the meeting after something changes, we can certainly revise that. I would love to see the kids all back in school, but that would mean doing away with the 6-foot social distancing, because we cannot do that safely in our schools with the staff that we have. But I think the remote, and I've gotten several emails from parents that have said, you know, the remote, it's not ideal, but the remote is working. We've adapted to it. We've adjusted our schedules to it. We can handle it. Don't take that away from us. So they obviously didn't want to go full remote. Ideally, we'd love to get the kids back in the classroom. I just don't think that right now is the time to do that. And I'd like to, rather than put a specific end date on hybrid, I think it's something we need to discuss at each one of our board meetings as they come up. That's my 2 cents. So, any input? Jim?
I would move to support your statement to remain remote for the remainder of this week, returning to hybrid next week after the holiday.
Okay. Moved?
Second.
And moved and seconded. Okay, so the discussion right now is, or the motion on the floor right now is to continue the remote for the balance of this week and return to the hybrid model as of Tuesday the 19th, the day after Martin Luther King Day. Any other discussion? Charlene, Wendy, did you get that? Yep, the motion on the floor is to remain in the remote model for the balance of this week, and then return to the hybrid model beginning Tuesday the 19th, the day after Martin Luther King, when the students come back to school. And that, again, to be discussed at each one of our board meetings going forward. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, we will take a vote then. Krista? Julianne?
Yes.
Tim? Wendy? Dr. Jim?
Yes.
Jim Pittman?
Yes.
Charlene? Dana?
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. So again, we will be remote for the balance of this week and return to a hybrid model as of next Tuesday. Okay? Yes.
Our next kind of milestone as far as being able to potentially go back full would have to occur in February so that they could have potentially the February vacation to put the classrooms back together, right? They need about a week.
Not necessarily. I think, we could do that based on what we're seeing around us as far as transmission. Our custodial staff has just been phenomenal, and as long as we know enough in advance, I don't think they would necessarily need vacation week. They would just need to know a week in advance.
Okay, a week in advance.
So, so they can plan their
Right.
schedule on when to move things and all that. Okay.
So the next item is future school board meetings, and I think, Jack, you wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, initially I thought it might be important that we meet every couple of weeks as different things are happening out there. I don't know if that's really necessary now. After thinking about it and after seeing what happened tonight and all that, I think we can stick with our regular board schedule. However, if any board member feels that there's a need for an additional meeting, if something comes up that we need to meet, contact me or contact Kathy, and we can schedule a special meeting. But I don't think it's necessary right now that we need to meet any more often than we're currently meeting. Again, unless something specific happens within the COVID world that's out there. So that's, again, I was going to suggest that we meet at least twice a month, but I don't think that's really necessary at this point. Your input is certainly welcome, but I think we're good the way we are. Okay, then again, if any board member feels that we should meet for any particular reason, certainly shoot me an email or call me or Kathy, and we'll get something scheduled before our next board meeting. Okay, thank you.
Right, and then the last item, Jack, for you is the, at least under my report, is New Hampshire School Boards Association.
Well, you had a couple of others, snow
Yeah,
removal.
I do have a couple of.
Yeah, you can do those if you want.
Okay, sure.
Snow removal and food.
I wanted to thank our custodial staff. We've had 2 storms in December equal to the amount of snow that we get most winters. And they were up in the middle of the night getting to the schools so that routes could be shoveled off and pathways could be made. Bus drivers did the same thing. They had to get up early, clean buses and clean all around their buses so they could get out and get our kids safely into school. So I think sometimes when things run smoothly, people forget everything that goes on behind the scenes in order to get it all done, and our custodial staff has just been phenomenal. So I just wanted to make sure that and then the other thing I wanted to mention is on Friday, January 15th, from 12 to 2, the New Hampshire Food Bank will be at St. Joseph's Church distributing truckloads of food to residents of Carroll County. So I think that's an important thing for residents to be aware of. These are tough times, and it's good to know that that's available for folks. So it's a drive-through event. And again, January 15th, 12 to 2, at St. Joseph's Church. And that's all I have, Jack.
Okay, and under New Hampshire School Board Association, I have a Zoom meeting tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7:30 to discuss the upcoming annual meeting. And then the annual meeting is going to be on Saturday, January 23rd from 10 to noon. And again, that's going to be a Zoom meeting, and we're going to be voting electronically on the resolutions and all that stuff. So a completely different world as far as that's concerned. And And also tomorrow morning, I have an NHIAA finance meeting to look at what's been happening with the sports programs and the financial impact on NHIAA. So that's a Zoom meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. So it should be a fun day. And I do have a note here. We did send a expression of sympathy card to Deb Bunting on the passing of her father, and that's all I had on. Oh, I do have another one? Oh, okay. Well, let's see here. Okay, this is from Lloyd Wood. My late grandfather told me many years ago that if you had your health, your reputation, and your friends, you are a wealthy man. About 3 weeks ago, I was involved in a significant multi-car accident on South Main Street, downtown Wolfeboro. I survived, but I'm most appreciative of the many cards, calls, and prayers from my community. Please thank all the people from the SAU and the school board. From Lloyd Wood. Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate that. And glad you were safe. All right. If nothing else is on the agenda, we'll move to committee reports. Wendy, anything from Academic Affairs? No report from Wendy. Okay. Thank you. Julianne? No report from Julianne. Finance, you heard enough from me tonight on the budget, so I will keep my mouth shut. And Human Resources, nothing as well. So advanced planning, you can see no school next Monday. The deliberative session, as announced, is January 30th, Saturday at 10 o'clock in the Arts Center right here. And our next school board meeting is February 8th, most likely here. But if it changes, we'll certainly let you know. And then the winter recess is from February 26th to the 22nd to the 26th. Public input. Anyone here that would still like to speak? Charlene.
Situation, and maybe you can help me figure out how we can protect ourselves, or what kind of authority we have. Say for example, a student announced on a social media platform that they were positive for COVID-19, and within a short time, well within the 14-day quarantine that's required, we learned that someone who had had close personal contact with that student was in attendance at a public meeting. This could happen it could be happening right now at the Arts Center. It could happen in any of our events. What kind of authority do we have? What sort of recourse do we have if there's someone present who knows they've been exposed to COVID-19 and they're not quarantining?
Yeah, we have very, very little recourse on that. We're relying on people's honesty and the ability to try to keep everybody safe. So we have very, very, very little recourse on that, unfortunately. Yeah, sad but true.
Be careful and stay safe.
Thank you, Charlene. Okay, any public input?
Hey, it's Robert Arson again, and Kathy, I am an analytical guy that was here before, and I do stay for these whole meetings, and I do listen because it's really important to me that we get our kids the best education possible. And to the board member on the right, who I apologize, I've ever taken any view on this dais here that is negative to what the board members do. I do believe that this is a difference of opinion, that everybody has their views, and so there's nothing that I think is nefarious or bad or everybody's doing the best they can. So I hear your comment, and I apologize if I've ever made anything negative inadvertently, because I don't feel that way at all. So Kathy, I'd like to thank you for having put up on the dashboard for the last 2 weeks the actual metrics that you're using. I think that's really helpful. And so I'd like to know, well, try and understand, when this spike comes back down again, and we're within the lower or moderate metrics, and the spread within the schools, or the circumstances within the schools put us in that lower category again, will we be able to reopen schools full-time for kids? Because we've obviously missed that opportunity in September, October, and November. The spike was predicted, but it's also probably going to tail off again in the not-too-distant future. So will we have the opportunity once again to go back to full school? I'd like to understand that. And two, when I read the social distancing guidelines that exist in the CDC requirements, and there's actually a new write-up I was looking at right now that they've just put out, it's not an absolute. It definitely is not an absolute. It's a part of a mitigating strategy that's combined with a whole bunch of other things. So if we're going to say that as long as coronavirus is around, we need to have 6 foot, then we should just say we're not going back to school until 2021 school year.
Sure.
Well,
I mean,
I certainly appreciate that, and our goal is certainly to get the kids back in the classroom. There's no question about that. Our life would be a whole lot easier if somebody would tell us exactly what the right answer is. We don't know what that right answer is, and you're right. Right now, the 6 foot guideline is something that is out there under CDC guidelines. Our plan was to follow the guidelines at that point in time. We have to look at everything as we move forward. The goal is certainly to get the kids back in the classroom. There's no question about that. That's where the education is best done. If we could do that next month, the middle of February, after February break, that would be ideal. I don't know if that's the right answer, but we're certainly hoping that we can get to that point.
And so I would implore this board to really work the 6 foot thing, because I don't think it's a gating item. You read the legislation, you look what the other schools are doing. You know, we're originally from New Jersey, so we're up here permanently now. We live in Tuftonboro. But back in there, they are not following 6 feet. They are saying that's a guideline. We do it as best we can, but we have to wear masks, we sanitize, we're doing all these other things as air control. So I would ask the board really try and move off the 6 feet, because we're going to come to a place where this is not going to be, it's going to be much more benign again. Let's try and get these kids back to school. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I could just make a comment. You're right. None of these things are absolute. The masks are an absolute. The 6 foot social distancing is an absolute. The sanitizing is an absolute. But if you listen to Dr. Chan from the Department of Health and Human Services in New Hampshire, he talks about layering and how important that is, because at any time, any one of these things can fail, and that's the point of having a number of them in place. So, you know, it's very hard for a teacher, for example, to stay away from a child who needs help, to keep that 6 foot distance, and that doesn't happen 100% of the time, and for good reason. But there are all of these other mitigating factors in place because it's a layering effect, and to keep things as safe as we possibly can. But I think if you talk to any of our teachers in the district, they will tell you that hybrid and remote is much more difficult than any other model. They would much rather be in person with their kids, and I think that's the goal that everyone has. Everyone wants the kids back.
Thank you. Okay, any other public input?
Yes, Corey Hunter again. Thank you guys so much for everything you're doing tonight. So I just had 2 things. First, I wanted to just lend onto my experience and expertise with the basketball situation that has happened to kind of alleviate maybe any extra concerns that a couple of board members may have had, in particular Charlene, just because I've had the opportunity to be coaching over the last couple of months, coaching 7th and 8th graders and 3rd and 4th graders in other environments. And I can just speak to you and just let you know that when the protocols are followed, it really works very smoothly. And even in the situations where you have some athletes where you may be worried that the masks might cause a breathing issue, they may not be in the proper conditioning to play. I can personally say that I've dealt with kids, that are in that situation, and they've done extremely well, and there have been no issues. In particular, we're playing 7th and 8th graders down in Manchester and Concord once a weekend. Everything flows smoothly. All the protocols are put in place. Everybody's wearing masks, limited number of fans. Teams have to exit from a different door than where they enter. One group leaves before another group comes in. So, I just felt like I had the experience over the last couple of months to really, reassure the basketball aspect of things. And then so on top of that, I'm also the commissioner of the Youth Boys Basketball League in Wolfeboro and Tuftonboro. And I know this issue hasn't been raised, but I feel that it's necessary for me to kind of add this to the situation, and that is the outside use of facilities, in particular for youth sports in the district. I think this goes hand in hand with the winter sports situation. Obviously, I think everybody would feel that it's just as important for an 18-year-old playing the sport as it is for an 8-year-old playing the sport, for all the reasons that we've talked about. To have the physical activity, to have the socialization. So I'm hopeful that this board, and I'm not asking this to take place right now, but I know a lot of people continue to email me and ask me to see if we are going to be able to offer some sort of a basketball season for our youth athletes. Obviously hockey programs, the Back Bay Hockey Program is a youth program that has been ongoing since August or September. Ski programs are happening. The Abenaki ski program is happening already over the last few weeks, and they're practicing at different places. And so all the other sorts of activities that are winter sports have been and are currently happening. So I would just ask that, especially based on my position, being in charge of the boys' league and also being involved with the girls' league, I can't speak for the other towns, unfortunately, and what their need is for use of facilities. But I know that we count on these facilities because we don't have a private rec center like a lot of other towns have the ability to use. I'm going to be coaching the middle school boys basketball team. I'm very aware of every single protocol that's necessary and have been ready to implement all of those protocols had we been given the approval to use facilities. So I would just ask that, please, take consideration into possibly taking a vote to consider that. And I know there's so many other activities that you, of course, get asked by other public groups to use the facilities. So I know this is a very, touchy subject, but I would definitely appreciate the consideration of at least talking about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Corey. Okay, any other public input?
My name is Jessica Williams. I have 2 children in the district. Number 1, I just want to speak to the hockey program, and just in case this comes up for a vote again, I just want you all to know what the protocols are like at the hockey arenas I've been to in the state. As my son plays hockey, he's in 7th grade, and he's part of the Pop Whalen hockey program, the Back Bay hockey program. And they have had no cases, as far as I know. One staff member just recently tested positive, unfortunately, but it has not been going through the kids despite their close contact. All of them have to wear masks or a bubble, which is a retrofitted helmet. We all have to take our temperature before entering the facilities. We all have to fill out a form to get a QR code on our phones before we're allowed into any hockey arenas, so that contact tracing could be conducted from anyone present. We also, we are only allowed to have a certain number of parents inside the hockey arenas, so we're not standing there elbow to elbow. Sometimes you can't even watch your kid play and you might cry about it, and it doesn't feel good, but this is what we have to deal with right now. So I just want to speak to that. The second thing I want to say is that I'm going to warn this board to not engage in gossip. And I'm speaking to Charlene Seibel specifically, and she should not be saying certain things or insinuating certain things. She should not be engaging in gossip. Slander is a crime, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Number 3, this question is for Kathy specifically, and it's regarding curriculum. Is it your responsibility to set and approve curriculum in the district?
You want to give me a little more background to that question, Jessica?
Sure, absolutely. So if a teacher may have a certain curriculum to cover for biology or chemistry or physics.
Mm-hmm.
If that curriculum changes, do you have to approve that first?
The standards, if the standards change, yes. What is actually taught is taught based on what the standards are. So teachers do have a certain amount of autonomy.
Okay, so if a teacher changes, let's say removes about 20% of the curriculum and maybe standards aren't going to be met, at what point do you get involved?
Well, I guess somebody would have to be in contact with me and let me know that so we could discuss it.
Have you discussed that with your staff?
I haven't had any complaints about that, Jessica.
Okay. Well, may I make a formal complaint that curriculum is being removed?
Well, why don't you set a time to come to my office and talk about it? I'd be happy to meet with you.
Okay, I just want you to know that that's happening in the district.
Okay, well, come on in, just call my secretary and we'll sit down and we'll go over your concerns.
Can parents get access to the standards so that we can make sure that our students, our children are meeting these standards?
Oh, absolutely.
And where are those available?
Well, you can look at the minimum standards, and those are available on the Department of Education website, and those are the standards that we follow. And again, like I said, you're welcome to come in. I'd take as much time as you need to sit down and go over everything with you.
I'm just getting this I'm just trying to do this here so that other people can get the information. So I think some of us are just curious as to what's going on with some of our kids, and if you're not doing the standardized testing, how do we know that they're meeting standards, I guess is the question.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is standardized testing, and there's also testing with each class. So, I invite you to come on in, and we can sit down and talk about it, and I can show you the standards, and you can let me know what your concerns are.
Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, there we go. Okay, any other public input at this point? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion then to, yes, sir.
Roger Decato, Carpenter School. I understand that you're not giving a back to full-time school date tonight, and that's fine. But I feel like maybe by the next school board meeting, you could have a couple dates for the parents, and because they'd really appreciate that. Everyone's at the last nerve. So if you could maybe have a date by the next school board meeting, I'm sure everyone would appreciate it. Or ideas or something. Thank you.
We'll certainly have some, maybe some goals set based on where things are at that, between now and our next board meeting. So we'll see what we can do for you. Thank you. Okay, I will entertain a motion then to go into non-public under RSA. Whoa,
I
go ahead, Charlene.
just had one comment.
Oh, yeah, I forgot closing comments. Son of a gun. All right, closing comments. Charlene, why don't you go first?
I guess I'm a little disappointed that we haven't discussed anything about the COVID vaccine. I know that the rollout is very rocky, And it seems to me that our teachers certainly should be able to get the vaccine as essential workers. Do we have any kind of an update on that?
Actually, I do, Charlene. Teachers are in the group that's it's called Phase 2A, and 2A is supposed to be rolled out between March and May. So I certainly wish it were sooner, but I'm glad to know at least there's a timeline there.
And I would also say that I hope you're all staying safe, and I know that our custodial staff does an extra wonderful job in terms of keeping our buildings clean and safe. And I would just like to strongly urge that tonight that there is special attention given to sanitizing the microphone. I would strongly urge everyone who spoke tonight to be extremely careful, and I hope that the entire building will be given especially careful attention because of the potential of it becoming some sort of a let's just say I would like to think that most people are good and kind and have empathy and care about their fellow humans, but we know that is not always the case. And so I'm just urging special attention tonight.
Thank you, Charlene. Wendy, anything? Okay, thank you. Dana, closing comments.
I just want to close and comment. Thank you for the people who are here in the audience and for people who are still listening at home. I want you to know that anybody involved in education has one thing in common, and that's to provide the best opportunity for children in the district. And I want to thank, and I'm not sure because of the microphone, of what Kristen said. We try to make the right decisions with the information we have in front of us. If that information changes, we're flexible. We do the right thing. We come back and reconsider. And I have read every email by people with an opinion. And again, like Kristen said, we respect your opinion. But I had thought that I was thick-skinned, but I was beginning to take things personally. And I hope that you understand that we're here for one reason. We're here for you and your children, and we try to do the best we can. And we will correct things as we continue and go on here. Thank you again.
Okay, Jim Pittman, anything? Okay, Krista, Julianne, Tim.
Certainly, I'd like to thank my fellow board members for reconsidering. I think for the well-being of the students and participating in sports, I think that was a great thing that we did tonight. And also, I just wanted to ask Kelly or you, Kathy, how the rollout as far as full-in is going for Middleton.
Well, I think that the staff are doing a great job making it work. You know, it's hard to know. There have been, the Middleton staff is a pretty small staff, and the school is about 142 students. And there has been a pretty high rate of infection in the school. There have been 10 positives in the school and several contacts. So awesome job on the part of the paraeducators, the staff, the principal. I mean, it is all hands on deck, and they're making it work. So.
That's fantastic. And I think just moving forward, I know Mr. Hunter had mentioned a couple of the schools, but one in particular that I've mentioned, Conway, SAU 9, if a conversation could occur between us and them as far as our plan and theirs, and it may have already, I don't know, but it seems to be working up there for the most part. I know they still have a few hiccups here and there, but if we could somewhat model what they're doing to potentially come to full reopen, that would be great.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. Jim, anything?
Is it working?
Yeah.
Good. Krista, thank you for your speech. That was very erudite. I wouldn't be able to say it as well as you did. Another thing about guidelines, though. People get hung up on that word, and I don't know exactly why. In the health professions, we don't usually refer to them as guidelines. Usually called best practices. So what you're doing is, at the time of your decision, you're making a decision based on a best practice that you're aware of. I hate guidelines. Guidelines are just worthless. They should be best practices. I don't know why they don't use that term. Most of the people who are involved with this are physicians and other health professionals. They don't use the term best practices, and that's what they should be doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Kelly, anything? Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming and listening through the process. And I want to thank the people in the audience that were out there tonight. Your input was important to us to listen to. For those people that are at home that listened through the process, I think it was a good meeting, and I appreciate everybody's comments. And I think we're ready to go into non-public at this point. So now I will entertain a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A ;3, paragraph 2, for a legal and a student matter. Moved by Dr. Jim, seconded by Tim. Krista? Julianne? Tim? Wendy? Dr. Jim? Jim Pittman? Charlene? Dana? And chair votes aye. We are now in non-public. Thank you again for coming.